You do everything right. You build your career, you raise your kids, you serve faithfully in your community.
Right.
You lock the doors at night, and you finally think, I'm safe. And then the floor entirely drops out from under you.
Yeah, it really does.
We're often taught that a crisis happens because we failed or we stopped trying. But why do our greatest breakdowns often happen right after our greatest successes?
That is such a vital question.
It is. Welcome to this deep dive into a reflection titled From This Week's Sermon by Our Pastor. We're going to explore the profound insights from 2 Chronicles 20.12 and what it actually means to fix our eyes on the Lord when our best human efforts are completely useless to stop our lives from going sideways.
It's a jarring reality check, isn't it? As the pastor shared with us, we work so hard to establish stability.
Oh, absolutely.
We get the degrees, we find the good jobs, we volunteer at church, and life lulls us into this comfortable illusion that effort equals immunity.
Right, like a transaction.
Exactly. We assume that if we build a thick enough wall, well, pain just can't get in.
But then life looks at all that careful preparation and asks a question we never saw coming. It just asks, so what?
Yeah, so what?
You worked that hard, but did you know a diagnosis could still happen? Did you know a betrayal could still happen? I really want to look at King Jehoshaphat today, the 4th king of Judah, because his story perfectly mirrors this exact modern crisis.
It really does.
From the pastor's message, we learned that Jehoshaphat was living in what we would absolutely call a golden age.
Oh, without a doubt.
Sure.
If we look at 2 Chronicles 17, his life is summarized with an incredibly rare phrase. It says, "The Lord was with Jehoshaphat."
Wow. That's a beautiful commendation.
It's heavy, right? And he paired this deep, genuine faith with extraordinary administrative competence. He didn't just pray. He acted.
It got to work.
He really did. He strengthened his military to over 1 million soldiers. He fortified the cities. He stabilized the economy. He even sent Levites out to teach God's law.
Which was entirely countercultural for kings of that era, right? They typically only cared about hoarding power and collecting taxes.
Exactly. By every single metric, Judah was thriving. The foundation was totally solid.
Right. And then a scout rushes into the palace, shouting that a vast coalition army has arrived right at Ingrier. They're practically in the living room.
Yeah, right on the doorstep.
But here's what I don't get, and I wrestled with this during the sermon. If doing everything right doesn't protect us, what was the point of Jehoshaphat building up that massive 1 million-man army in the first place? It feels like all that faithful preparation was just, a waste of time.
I get that, but it wasn't a waste. It's more that it exposes the limits of human control. Preparation is wise, but relying on it for your ultimate salvation, well, that's a trap.
A trap, yeah.
When a crisis like this hits, it proves that life simply cannot be secured by effort alone. And the specific identity of this invading army makes that point even more devastating.
Oh, this part of the message was so striking.
Right. This wasn't a horde of faceless enemies from a distant land. This coalition was made up of Moab, Ammon, and Edom. These were descendants of Lot and Esau.
They were relatives.
Exactly. These were relatives.
Which changes the entire dynamic. It's not an external invader you can simply wall off. It makes me think of an autoimmune disease.
Oh, that's a really compelling analogy.
Yeah, like when an outside virus attacks, your body knows how to fight it.
Yeah.
You can take medicine to build up a defense.
Yeah.
But an autoimmune disease is terrifying because the very cells that are supposed to be part of you, the ones you fundamentally trust, are the ones turning against you.
They bypass all your carefully built armor.
Exactly. The betrayal and the wounds that come from those closest to us, from family, from trusted friends, they just cut so much deeper than anything a stranger could do.
They do. That internal betrayal shatters the illusion that we can perfectly insulate ourselves from pain. Moab and Ammon were nations Israel had explicitly spared during their journey to the Promised Land.
Right, they had history.
They had blood ties. Jehoshaphat had the best military, the best economy, and a faithful heart, and yet this deeply personal crisis still arrived right on his doorstep.
So what does a capable, brilliant leader do when his entire foundation shakes like that? Because our modern culture would demand that he put on a brave face.
Oh, constantly.
You're constantly pressured to, fake it till we make it, to act like we have it all together. If a leader today admits they're terrified, they risk losing their job or their influence. Pretending we have the answers is somehow seen as a virtue, but honestly, it is just exhausting.
It's totally exhausting. But Jehoshaphat didn't pretend to be a superhero. His immediate visceral reaction, which is reported so plainly in verse 3, was fear.
He was terrified.
He was terrified. And there is profound comfort in the absolute honesty of the Bible. It never portrays people of faith as these stoic statues who don't tremble or lose sleep.
I really, really appreciated that part of the pastor's message. We often silently shame ourselves when we feel panic. We tell ourselves, if I just had more faith, my palms wouldn't be sweating right now. I wouldn't be awake at 2 a.m. staring at the ceiling.
Yeah, we treat fear like it's a symptom of spiritual failure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But as the pastor shared with us, the opposite of faith is not fear.
Right. The opposite of faith is trying to manage your fear without God.
Wow.
Jehoshaphat is commended not because he was fearless, but because in the very center of his terror, he ran directly to God. He stood in front of the community and confessed, "We do not know what to do."
Saying "I don't know" out loud takes an enormous amount of courage, especially for a king.
Absolutely.
But practically speaking, how is saying "I have no answers" not just waving a white flag of surrender to the enemy? It sounds like giving up.
It's not giving up. It is yielding control. That confession is the actual beginning of faith.
Yeah.
This connects back to what the pastor shared about being poor in spirit.
Right, the Beatitudes.
Yeah. Being poor in spirit doesn't mean you are just, slightly lacking in resources and need a little top off. It means both of your hands are completely empty.
You have zero leverage left.
Zero. You have no confidence in your own ability to fix the situation. Think about it. Moses knew his wooden staff couldn't physically part a sea. David knew a small stone was not logically greater than a giant.
Right.
Recognizing your absolute inability is the prerequisite for God to work.
Because if you're tightly gripping your own backup plans, your hands are too full to receive whatever God is handing you.
Exactly.
But psychologically, how do you just let go when your nervous system is screaming at you to fix the problem? When we have empty hands, we tend to stare at them and just panic about how empty they are.
Which brings us to the second half of Jehoshaphat's prayer. He says, "But our eyes are on you."
Our eyes are on you.
Faith is fundamentally a fierce battle of focus. In Scripture, the eyes represent the direction of the entire heart. You naturally look toward whatever you trust the most to save you, or whatever you fear the most will destroy you.
Oh, that's so true.
Jehoshaphat had plenty of terrifying things to look at. He could have obsessed over the military reports, or paced the palace roof counting the enemy tents, or just stare at the panicked faces of his advisors.
And we do the exact same thing today with our phones. It's the modern equivalent of pacing the palace wall, doom scrolling.
Yeah, doom scrolling is the perfect word for it.
Right. When a crisis hits, whether it's personal or global, we sit there staring at the bad news, obsessively swiping through every worst-case scenario. We think that by gathering more information, we are gaining control.
But we aren't.
No. Staring at our problems doesn't shrink them. It acts like a magnifying glass. The threat consumes our entire field of vision, it paralyzes us, and suddenly, God seems very, very small.
Because the neurological and spiritual mechanism is exactly the same, whatever you focus your attention on consumes your cognitive bandwidth.
Wow. Yeah.
The pastor explained that from the very beginning of Genesis, this has been the struggle. Adam focused on the forbidden fruit more than he focused on God. Lot focused on the wealthy plains of Sodom more than he focused on God. Peter, walking on the water, shifted his gaze to the violent waves, and the moment he did, what happened? He began to sink.
He sank. So the object of your gaze literally dictates the direction of your life.
Precisely.
So the size of the problem in front of you actually matters less than the size of the one you were choosing to look at.
That is a beautiful way to put it.
To help us understand how to practically shift that gaze, the pastor referenced Psalm 123. It says, "Like servants watching the hand of their master, our eyes look to the Lord our God."
Think about the mechanism of that image for a second. Why does a servant fixate on the master's hand? In that cultural context, the master's hand is the sole instrument of provision. A servant doesn't look to their own pockets because, well, their pockets are empty.
Empty hands again.
Exactly. They watch the master's hand for the next meal, for protection, for just a subtle gesture of guidance. Jehoshaphat was declaring that Judah was no longer looking at their fortified walls or their million-man army. They were looking exclusively to the master's hand.
And they demonstrated that physically in one of the most heart-wrenching scenes from the pastor's message.
Yeah, the gathering in the temple.
Yes. All of Judah gathered in the temple courts. Verse 13 says, all the men of Judah, with their wives and children and little ones, stood there before the Lord.
It paints such a vivid picture. You have fathers who know they might not survive the week. You have mothers weeping. You have little children who don't understand geopolitics or military strategy, but they absorb that suffocating terror in the air.
They feel it.
They absolutely feel it. Yet they didn't scatter. They didn't run into the hills to hide in caves. They stood entirely still in the presence of God. Why? Because God was literally the only option left.
You know, that heavily challenges my own definition of faith. I usually think faith means having this quiet, unshakable confidence that everything is going to work out exactly the way I planned it.
Yeah, the neat and tidy version of faith.
Right. But the pastor compared that gathering in Judah to believers today who show up to church in the midst of crushing, unresolved grief.
It's the people who walk through the church doors the morning after a funeral. Or the parents who have spent the entire night weeping over their child's health, and yet they still come and sit in the pew.
Yeah.
They don't have a single answer. They are physically and emotionally exhausted, but they show up and silently say, I do not know what to do, but I refuse to leave your presence.
Oh, that gives me chills.
That is the exact same faith as those families standing in the temple courts. They hadn't seen a miracle yet. They just saw the threat. But they anchored themselves to God anyway.
But let's be really honest here, because this raises a difficult question for anyone walking into this coming week with a massive burden. Let's say we do this.
Okay.
We come with empty hands, we confess our fear, we aggressively shift our focus away from doom scrolling, and we look to the Lord. Does doing all of that make the problem just go away?
Well, spoiler alert for King Jehoshaphat, after he finished that beautiful, vulnerable prayer, the coalition army was still camped right outside the city.
Wow. So the problem was still sitting on his doorstep.
The circumstances hadn't changed at all.
Not at all.
They hadn't. And this brings us to what the pastor called the deeper miracle. We are so conditioned to believe that the only miracle that matters is God immediately intervening and changing our circumstances.
We demand the instant rescue.
We do, and God does provide that sometimes. But before Jehoshaphat prayed, the situation was terrifying. After he prayed, the situation was still terrifying. The army had not retreated an inch, but Jehoshaphat had changed.
His eyes had changed.
Yes.
That insight that God often changes the person before he changes the situation. It shifts the entire goal of our faith. We spend all our energy praying for the fire to be put out, but God is often using the fire to forge something completely new inside of us.
The deeper miracle is a human being who learns to trust God while they are still wandering in a dry wilderness. It's a person who can somehow sing hymns of praise while locked in a dark prison cell.
Yeah.
It's remaining steadfast and calm while sitting right in the middle of the lion's den. To be internally transformed into a person with that kind of resilient, anchored soul is a far greater eternal miracle than simply having a temporary problem removed.
Because when we look back on our lives, the moments that actually deepened our faith weren't the easy days on the mountaintop when the bank account was full and everyone was healthy.
No, never.
The defining moments were the days we were crying but did not collapse. The days we kept putting one foot in front of the other, even though the fog was so thick we couldn't see the path. It was the God who stayed with us in the valley that sustained us.
That is exactly why the framed verses hanging in the homes of those who have endured deep suffering are rarely about financial success or easy living.
That's a great point.
They are verses like, "My grace is sufficient for you," or "The Lord is my shepherd." They are reminders of the presence of God in the valley of the shadow of death. Jehoshaphat's greatest gift from God that day wasn't the military victory that eventually unfolded. The greatest gift was receiving eyes that knew exactly how to look to God when all other lights went out.
I really want to make sure we hold on to the beautiful comfort for the pastor's message as we wrap up this reflection. If you are sitting there right now and you are terrified about an unexpected medical report or a sudden loss of income or a deeply painful betrayal by someone you trusted, God does not scold you for being afraid.
No, he doesn't.
He does not demand that you have your emotions perfectly sorted out before you approach him.
He welcomes your absolute honesty. It is a requirement of true faith to stand before him with empty hands and admit your limits. Faith isn't possessing the answers. It is knowing exactly where to look when you have absolutely none.
We talked at the beginning about that unexpected so what moment. That terrifying realization that you can do everything right and the ground can still shake beneath your feet. So what is the coalition army that you are staring at right now? What is the problem that is growing larger and larger in your vision, consuming your bandwidth and making God seem smaller?
The battle will be won or lost in your focus.
What would it look like for you today, in this exact moment, to consciously stop staring at your fears, to shift your gaze entirely away from that overwhelming army and fix your eyes softly but firmly upon the Master's hand? The situation outside your door might not change tomorrow, but the deeper miracle, the changing of your heart, well, that can begin right now.